Well, it's great to be here. My name's Gail Fricker, and I'm a student minister at Knox United in Ayr, and I've been there for my 4th year. So I'm just completing my training at Atlantic School of Theology, and hopefully will be a candidate for ordination in 2020. So my background's in storytelling as well, so I feel very passionate about the need to tell stories, and I think that when we tell the stories of transformation, then they can inspire and encourage others to also change and transform. So I've been very fortunate in receiving, or we've been very fortunate rather at Knox, in receiving 2 grants from Embrace the Spirit. So I want to share a little bit about the stories of both of those grants. So the first one that we received was for a program that we created called Lunch and Learn. We have had a partnership that was in place at Knox before I arrived, which was kind of like a food bank, but it was more of a food co-op, and it was partnered with Cambridge Food Co-op. And we were finding that people were coming there. We only had about 8 families, but they were coming there and they were taking food, and they weren't really understanding how to cook with some of that food. So frequently, some of the food would be left because they just didn't know how to use it and how to cook with it. So we decided that we would try and set up a program that would try and teach them to cook with the ingredients that are mostly provided by the food bank, and share some hospitality as well. So we applied for I think it was an innovation grant called Lunch and Learn. So the idea was that they would come once a month. We would use the ingredients provided by the food bank, plus some that we would buy ourselves with the grant, and then we would cook. So we would, they would come about 10 o'clock, and we would cook a 3-course meal, and they would have the ingredients, they would have the recipes, and they would share that fellowship time cooking, chopping, and cutting, and peeling, and baking, and all those kind of things. And then they would eat that meal afterwards, and they would get to take a portion home. They would freeze and take a portion home as well. And as it got off the ground, we were finding that some people were wanting to come just for the meal rather than for the cooking part. So although that wasn't our idea initially, we realized that that was an important part of it, the whole hospitality part of it, that it taught us that sometimes programs change and become more what they're meant to be, and than just having a set plan and this is what it is. So we started to have people come. They would come and join us around 12 o'clock, and they would set the table, and then their partnership would be that they would help do the washing up or the clearing up afterwards, because since they hadn't done the cooking. And we would still have food to sell afterwards, so they would still take a portion home. And then we started to freeze them and sell them to the seniors in our congregation. So that was another extension of the program. The people that were cooking began to realize that what they were doing was giving value to other people as well. And then it grew again, and we joined up with a group called Senior Times Out, which comes and eats on every Friday at our church. And the Lunch and Learn program decided that they wanted to cook for the Seniors Time Out. So that's happened now 3 or 4 times, and they just love that. It gives them a sense of value and a sense of giving back, since they feel that they've received and they want to give back. And then the other way in which it grew is we decided that a lot of the food that comes in from the Cambridge Food Co-op isn't necessarily fresh food. I mean, there is some, but we wanted to grow our own. So we built a garden, a community garden. And we run a youth program, so the youth helped build the garden, which again, we partnered with another group. And then the Lunch and Learn people planted the stuff and so forth. And the beautiful story in that is we had a lady with us called Joanne, who was in her last year of life. And we knew that she was really sick, but she was a really keen gardener. And she's sadly passed away now, but in her last year of life, the garden just gave her hope and a reason to get up every day, is what she said, which was just incredible. And when she passed away, we have a plaque up on the garden now saying it's dedicated to Joanne. And we've had a new person take over from where Joanne left off, so it hasn't gone to waste. And in fact, she wants to expand it. So this year we're building and partnering with Neighbors Helping Neighbors to build a second garden, and then with the Agricultural Society to come and teach the people in Luncheon Learn what to grow and how much room does some tomatoes need, or how much room does these vegetables need, because I don't know anything about it really, and so it was kind of hit and miss. So we're partnering with the Agricultural Society in the spring to come and teach them those kind of things. So the whole program has kind of just changed as we've gone along, and we've learned and we've realized that sometimes that what you write down in the grant application isn't necessarily what happens in the end. I mean, it is, but new wonderful things reveal themselves. Like things, friendships, for example, has been a huge part of this that we never really imagined friendships would be. And just comfort level. I think the story for me that tells it the most, there was one person who comes to the Luncheon Lamb who is not a member of our congregation and very much on the peripheral and the outside of the community, was very sick and was sent to emergency to a hospital and was admitted and had nobody to support her, and came and asked through her parents, can you get Gail to come? And that was really for me like, wow, because she felt that she was part of our community. So it's like we have our own little church with Luncheon Learn and sort of feed each other, not just in terms of nutrition, but in terms of the spirit as well. So that's been a real growth area for us. So it continues. And the newest thing that they're trying to get off the ground now is when they come, which I find really funny, after eating all this food, they want to have an exercise class. So we're talking about having some kind of TV there and doing in your chair, because some of them have mobility issues. So some kind of exercise in the chair or something that we're looking at doing in the new year. So that might happen. We'll see where that goes. So that's that program, which has been very exciting. And then the other program that we received funding for was something that I'm very passionate about, in believing that sometimes people will come to church on a Sunday, but there's a lot of people that are just uncomfortable in that kind of worship format. So I wanted to create a different kind of worship format, and I started something called Jazz Vespers. And Jazz Vespers was to be once every other month. We did a pilot project about 3 or 4 times first, just to see if there was some interest, and there was. So we applied for a grant, and last year we did it every other month and bringing in professional musicians. So the money we applied for helped us pay union fees, because I thought it was really important for us to pay correct and just fees to musicians. And the evening program was really just a chance to experience the sacred in a different way, and particularly sort of aiming towards people who wouldn't normally be comfortable in a church setting, perhaps. So bringing them into a sacred setting, listening to some wonderful professional music, a little tiny bit of a message and some poetry maybe, and just a chance to experience the divine in that environment. So it grew and grew, and we decided to add food afterwards, so just like snacks and that at the back of the sanctuary, which was a bit of a growth for my congregation to have food in the sanctuary, and a chance again to share hospitality. And on average, we were having about 40 people, 35 to 40 people every other month, on a last Wednesday of the month, come to this. And for a small town like Ayr, that's a pretty big number. So that's where we're at with that. We've also now been able to partner with the Musicians Union. So when funds were running down low, we had some musicians there, and I said, we're really hoping to apply for another grant to start this again in January, with the goal that we will do it every month, so there's that consistency, and with the goal that we are hoping then to do it out into the park in the summer, and just sort of spreading out a bit more. And then one of the musicians from the musicians who was there that day said to us, well, I can help you with that, and put me in touch with the Musicians Union, who have now agreed to pay 40% of the musicians' fees all the time. So that's fantastic. The challenge has been that programs take a long while to grow. Quick fixes is never the answer. And something that just becomes the idea of the minister is also not the answer, because when the minister leaves, those programs die. So in order to really have something that maintains itself and is sustainable, slower growth is sometimes better. And in the case of our, and then with Luncheon Lamb, we've seen that to be the case. It's now been going for like 2 or 3 years. With the Jazz Vespers program, we applied for a grant again with this additional growth, with the idea it'll be once a month, with the idea that we're going outside. We've now partnered with the Musicians Union. We now have more lay leadership. And now sadly the funding's been pulled. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge for us. And it's a challenge for what we look at when we're looking at funding programs, is that sometimes it's hard to see growth immediately, and it can take a little longer to see that growth. And in terms of funding, sometimes it's good to look at funding something over 2 or 3 years rather than just a one-off program funding, which is great for some things, but when you're looking at real growth, you need to look at long-term. So those are my stories. I hope that they inspire other people and other churches to continue to try new things, and recognizing that it might not be easy, it might be some teething problems, and it might take a long while, but when the Spirit's moving, it's hard to stop it. Thank you.